Okay, so we have been drawing people, and we are going to continue with that today. We have been using a format for 8 heads high. You have your circle and your oval and your torso, shoulders. Be careful that you're not getting your waist too small, because when we start to do this next step, it's going to interfere with your with making it look realistic if your hips are too small. So keep them, they should not be as wide as the shoulders, but you don't want them to be teeny tiny. They shouldn't be as narrow as the head. They should be kind of in between, okay? So we know, even though we're not using the lines to draw the 7 heads high anymore, we still know our proportion. So we have our thighs, legs, calves, ankles, foot. I'm going to draw this one kind of out to the side. I need to change this so that it's going forward. Okay. Now, with our people, the next stage is to make them look more like people and less like robots. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a contour line. And the contour line is that layer of skin over the top that is your musculature and the skin. The oval for the head is going to stay very consistent. But you're going to kind of come down and out around the neck. Okay, if you remember from last year, with the head, your eyes are halfway down on the head, and we're going to use that measurement sometimes in what we're doing too. Your shoulder, sorry, comes out, and there's a definite turn there if your arm is going downwards. You don't want your shoulder to come out and down like this. You want it to come out to the side and down, because your shoulder comes straight out like that. I mean, if you feel the top of your shoulder, it's parallel to the ground. But if you raise your shoulder, this muscle here changes. So if your person has their arms up, girls, I'm videoing for the class, so I need you to just stay quiet while I do this. Okay. If your arm is coming out and up, so here's your shoulder, right? But if your arm is raised, that space narrows. So if this arm is coming up this way, this is not as big of a space as if your arm is down at your side. Okay. There's a small space, and then this muscle is going to go upwards. The arm muscle is wider at the base. Can you guys see that little guy up there? It's wider at the base, and it's going to get narrower as it comes up to your, thank you, as it comes up to your elbow. But your elbow is still wider than your lower arm for most people. Okay, and then that's going to get narrower as it comes down. But this muscle right here is going to be raised up if your arm is raised up. And it depends on the angle of the arm, how much. If your arm is down, then we'll go back to this one. Then your arm is going to come down around that. Now, we don't want to just outline our mannequin, because we're building in tissue and muscle where it should be. Your armpit is not this narrow right here. So you're going to build this in so that it's wider at the armpit and getting narrower as it comes down to the elbow. You want a point on your elbow. We don't want Gumby arms, right? There's a point on your elbow. And then your forearm also is wider at the elbow, and it's going to narrow down as you get to the wrist. And it depends on what you're doing with your hands. But you're going to have that wider to narrower on your forearms and your upper arms. Okay. When you do the torso, we're also not going to outline the mannequin. You don't want your body to look like an ant body in different sections. Okay, you want the skin to come along the outside edge. If you are drawing a figure that has a narrower waist, whether it's because they are physically developed from weightlifting or athletic, or whether they're just thin, you're going to have a little bit of a curve because the hips are wider than the waist if they're narrow-waisted. If they're not narrow-waisted, if their body comes out, then you're going to add that in there too. Both sides need to match though. But we're not going to outline this bump, bump, bump from our mannequin. We're going to add that layer of skin over the top. Okay. So if the hip is coming out because they're standing with their hip cocked to the side, then you're going to draw that. And there's also not a gap between the thighs, at least not that much. Your thighs are also wider at the top and narrower as they come down to the knee. Okay. So you're going to add that space. So you're kind of just filling in so that this doesn't not look like a mannequin any longer. Okay. You have on your knee, okay, if your leg is facing forward, the skin's going to come out a little bit and in a little bit, but not drastically, okay? You don't have like a big bump on your knee, right? We're not going to do Picasso knees. It's going to come out. Your calf muscle, however, is going to curve out a little bit from the knee. And sometimes on the inside, if you have somebody that's an athlete, they're a runner, or they lift weights, or they just genetically have bigger calves, you may have more of a pronounced calf muscle. Some people do, and some people don't. But you're going to have some kind of variation there where there's going to be a curve, okay? If you were drawing your leg from the side, and this is why I drew my person this way, you're going out, there's going to be a corner, right, on the knee. Sometimes it's kind of flat on the back of the knee, and then that calf muscle is going to come out again, too. Again, and depending on how developed their musculature is, it may look a little different. But the front of the leg is usually flat if you're drawing it from the side. And then there's a bump that comes out on the back where the muscle is developed. Okay. So as we're adding all of these details here, we then need to start thinking about clothing. Okay. So your body is a cylinder. If you remember in 6th grade, we learned how to draw cylinders. And this curve is the important part, because this is where it's closer to you and this is where it's further away. And that's what shows that it is a curved object. Well, your body is made up of a whole bunch of cylinders. Your arms are cylinders, your legs are cylinders, your toes are cylinders, everything's a cylinder except your head, okay? So when we start to add clothing to your body, you need to keep this skill in mind, because what you're doing is you're creating that illusion of 3D form on your 2-dimensional drawing. So if this is my natural waist and this is where my jeans are sitting, okay, I'm going to have a curved line here rather than a straight line across, because I want my body to look 3-dimensional. Okay, if you have a shirt here, you're going to curve a t-shirt. It's going to come from behind your arm. It's going to go around to the other side of your arm. So you have a curve there. I also want you to note that most t-shirts are not skin tight. And so they're going to be up off of the body a little bit. So you're going to be enhancing that line a little bit more. Same thing. If you have a tight t-shirt, it's going to show this outline of your body. If you have a looser t-shirt or a sweatshirt, it's not going to. It's going to hang loosely off of the body. So the type of shirt that you have is going to affect how your person looks. So that's one of the reasons we're kind of doing this in stages. If you have a V-neck or a crew neck, which is the curved one, you need to kind of establish that. It's going to come from behind your neck. So if I zoom that in, if this becomes the neck, This is going to come around and down, right? Because it's coming from behind you. There's a little bit of a shadow there. Okay, and it's laying on top of the skin. Does that make sense? Okay. So you have, if this were a sweatshirt, you would have a more bulky fabric back here. This is your sweatshirt laying on the back. Okay, you can see that stick up a little bit. You might have the strings hanging down. Might even have the little kangaroo pouch pockets in here. Okay. Also, if you have a sweatshirt, it may be bulkier. So I did a t-shirt sleeve on this arm. I'm going to do a sweatshirt sleeve on this arm. So a lot of times sweatshirts are bulkier and they might hang a little differently. Might go out from the body. You might have wrinkles in them that suggest, the curve underneath, but maybe are even really bulky. If you've got the sleeves pushed up or something like that. So when you have fabric that's loose, you have oftentimes more folds. Okay, so that's going to give that illusion of a bulkier fabric rather than your skinny arm. Yeah? Okay, we keep going. So if your person were wearing blue jeans, you would have details in the blue jeans that say blue jeans, like the fly of a zipper. Okay, or a pocket. You might have some creases in the fabric where your body bends. A few little lines to indicate that there's fabric there. If they're skinny jeans, they're going to be fitted. Okay, you're going to go down to the bottom at the ankle. She's got her foot kind of turned and picked up off the ground. Okay. If you have regular blue jeans on, you're going to lose some of that detail. So if I have regular looser fit blue jeans on, not skinny jeans, you're still going to see some of those details, but you might have more gathers in the crotch or like creases at the knees. If you were wearing a boot, it's going to come down and maybe curve a little bit. You might have some wrinkles down there. And if you had, depending on the type of shoe you're wearing, okay, it's going to look different. So you can still kind of see where the knee is. It's more of an indication with some wrinkles or maybe a fold of fabric or whatever. But that is much simpler. Okay. There's a belt buckle or something. If you had a button-up shirt, you would have a seam, or if you had like a sweatshirt, you have your buttons. You just have to decide what your person might be wearing. So you can be as creative as you want with your clothing. A button-up shirt is a little bit looser. I don't know what they're doing yet. I should figure that out. Maybe they're carrying a briefcase. This kind of looks like a guy. We're going to give him a cuff here and hand carrying a briefcase. I think his hand is backwards. I might need to pay attention to the hand. Yes, I believe so. This would be a thumb here. Oops. Okay, so you have different, different details with your person. If he were looking out to the side, if this is his face here and his ear over here, you have his head eyes are halfway. If he were wearing a hat, oh, let's give him a cowboy hat. Kind of feel a cowboy hat coming on. All right, so you have a hat that's coming out, right? You got a baseball cap. You could come over here. Sorry, I know that being right-handed doesn't help. If this is your eye line, then your hat's going to be above that, like, because the ears are right here, right? And your hat comes right down to your ears. And it's going to come above where your head would be because it's on your head. And then you have the bill of the cap. Some people curve their bills of their caps. It's going to come out to the side here. This is the ear. Okay. If your hat was straight on, baseball cap straight on, you're going to have the bill getting smaller as it goes back to the head. And the eyes would be kind of blocked. The ears are back here. With your face, don't worry about that too much right now. Don't get caught up in those little things. For a more female form, you might have a narrower waist or broader hips, but don't get too stereotypical in that. A lot of people want to make their women very willowy and no shoulders and that kind of stuff. Don't get too caught up in that. If you're doing a narrower torso and wider hips, you're very much kind of going with a stereotype like the one I'm drawing now. You don't want to get too caught up in that. Sometimes that is the case, sometimes it is not. But there are things to think about with the female form that are a little bit different. Sometimes they are wider at the hip, not necessarily meaning that they're narrower at the waist. It just means that the hips sometimes are wider. It depends on the age of your woman and their developmental stage. Like if you're drawing a mom bod, they're going to look different than a 12-year-old or a child. Everybody is different. So think about those things, but don't obsess about them. Okay, you have pockets, or maybe like they're stretch pants or sweatpants. You can figure those things out as you go. Do we have any questions? I haven't really looked at the chat. Anybody have questions so far about what we've been looking at? So what you're going to do today for your lesson is you're going to take your drawing papers that you did on Friday, drawing your people in motion. And what I want you to do first is go over your mannequins and kind of smooth those out and figure out, your thick to thin on the arms, where the elbow is going to be. There should be a definite identification of an elbow somewhere, right? Bending, whether their arm is raised or not. And figure out your waist. Again, if you have a bulky sweatshirt, it may come out and then back in, and then you got, if you had tighter yoga pants on underneath a bulkier sweatshirt, or even just a bulkier frame on your person. And, not everybody's the same, and everybody's beautiful, and you can draw whatever type of person you want to draw, but don't get caught up too much in worrying about, right or wrong. Just go with what you want to draw. I will say, because a couple of people were doing sports pictures like football and things like that, if you're concerned with musculature, like in the arms, in order to avoid Popeye looking muscles, I would prefer to go ahead and, so if your person were to be flexing, it's not just one bump of a muscle. I had a few people drawing in class, drawing like bodybuilders in the process of lifting a heavy barbell weight. Their arms are going to be more developed because they have done the work to do that. If they're actively lifting a weight, the lat muscle right here, okay, is going to be engaged, and you're going to probably see an armpit. They all had tank tops on their people, so you're going to come around here. And this shoulder muscle comes up. When you raise your arm, when you're in the process of raising your arm or pushing up, if you make that motion, you're going to, and put your hand on the top of your shoulder, you can feel your arm, there's a little flat spot, and then your shoulder muscle bunches up. And you've got this happening here. If you're holding onto a bar with weights on it or something, like you have a more developed muscle. A lot of times in basketball players, for those of you that are looking up pictures of basketball players shooting or in motion, like they physically train their bodies to be muscular so they can be fit enough to go up and down the court and do what they need to do for their basketball profession. And so their muscles are more defined. So make sure that you observe that and try to draw that as you're drawing. I definitely encourage you to look up some photos, whatever topic you're interested in today in your action drawings. So we're going to start with our old drawings from Friday, and we're going to just go and try to add the contour of the skin to those, and then start to experiment with getting your cylinder lines in to show your clothing and developing some of the details of hoods and hats and buckles and collars and those kind of things on the drawings that you've already done. And then when you're ready, you can draw a person. And if you make your mannequin pieces light enough in pencil, you can go back and erase all of those, and you won't even see those. You'll have your contour of your person in their clothes. Okay, so that's how you add skin and clothes. The next question all of you are going to ask is how to do hands and feet, and that is tomorrow's lesson. So hold that thought. We'll do a little bit on faces tomorrow, but mostly it's going to be hands and feet. So if you get stuck on the hands or the feet, hold that thought until tomorrow. Today, just focus on getting your person to look three-dimensional by using your cylinder lines, and have fun adding details. You can add somebody that did a pirate with a bandana around their head and an eye patch and a beard. In the other class, they turned one of their people into like a funny character, which is totally fine because you're developing the details that tell the story to let you know who that character is. If your person's a basketball player, they're going to have a basketball jersey with a number. If they are a golfer, they might have their fancy golf shirt on. So, with a little polo collar type thing, more similar to this guy. So you're going to develop your person and do some of your storytelling with the type of clothes and the type of physical attributes that they have. Okay, questions? Yep. So if you have any other questions, those look like they were maybe before I did the female drawing. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and we can do some questions and answers.